So I'm Martin Price. I'm VP of Product at Vungle, and that's kind of what we do. So by way of intro, so video advertising and user acquisition for partners, monetization for publishers. So today I'm delighted to have Cesar here with me. Cesar, why don't you give a little bit of intro about you and Fanatee and what you guys do?
Hello everyone, I'm happy to be here and share some of our learnings and history of Fanatee. We are, just to get a bit of background, we are a casual gaming development company based in Brazil. We have a small office in the US already now. We are 4 years in the market. We launched our first game in 2013. In 2014 we launched Stop, which is a multiplayer word game that did quite some success here in the US and other countries. It's a very casual game, but a game that had a viral growth in a few regions, so that enabled us to grow the company and invest more into different types of games. Most recently, we just launched a game called Cody Cross. It's a crossword puzzle-inspired game, and this year, in 2017, we're focusing a lot on that as well. Myself, I have a finance background. I worked with investment banking for some years, and then luckily I left that, and I've been involved with some seed investments in startup community in Brazil for more than 6 years now, and we started Fanatee 4 years ago with a very small project that was taking a game, a word game that my business partners had on the web for a long time, and we translated it to English and Spanish and started slowly growing the game, saw some traction, good retention numbers, and then we worked on a new project which was Stop. That was when we really started the company. Yeah.
That's awesome. So maybe, I mean, we were chatting a bit about this earlier, maybe a little bit of the early stage. I think it's always interesting. You said you started an incubator. Maybe you can give us a little, talk about the early days and kind of where you're at now.
Yeah, so it was a big challenge when we started Fanatee. I was doing some investments in really small investments in Brazil with startups, and my business partner had this idea of taking a casual game and bringing it to the App Store, to the Google Play Store. So a game that was live 1999, 2000 on the web. And I said, let's make this game portable to mobile, change it a bit and see how it goes. And we didn't know anything about mobile at the time. We didn't know much about monetization, in-app purchases, anything. But slowly and steadily we will learn. And our first game that was developed 100% in-house, that was Stop, we launched in the beginning of 2014. We had a big Apple feature in Latin America. That was very good, editor's choice in Latin America, but the game was not ready to be featured. So we had a very bad retention numbers. We didn't have enough content so people could evolve in the game. People would play all the categories in the game really fast and sort of churn right after. And it took us actually a year of a lot of work to make the game better, investing in content, changing the monetization, investing in the way we want to show ads, and eventually 1.5 years later the game really took off, and we have more than 20 million downloads now.
That's awesome. So there were some knowing laughs when you mentioned, I think, from some of the folks in the crowd there. But can you give us a little bit of insight maybe into that process, right? So you talked about, you did some work around content, you did some work around the monetization. We're going to talk a bit more about the monetization. But maybe first, like, you know, how did you go about that? Because you're seeing these spikes, right? You're like, yeah, we're doing great. And then suddenly you're not seeing the conversion on the other side. How did that kind of go?
Yeah, so just to give a bit of context, Stop is a game that you play categories, and you have to get the words that start with a specific letter for that category. So let's say you have to say a sport that starts with A, animal that starts with A, and so on. When we launched the game, we had some free categories, but you also had paid ones. And what happens is that people play 10 categories for free. They sort of remember all the answers for that, and then they churn. And that was really a bad monetization strategy. So you know that 98, 95% of your users are not going to pay anything. So the people that continued in the game were the ones that paid for the categories. So we changed the monetization. We did it in a way that now we randomly select categories, and you can pay to change them. So that allows a much broader audience to be involved with the currency and with the categories. That increased retention and allow us to scale the game. And essentially, retention is very linked to your organic growth strategy. The more retention you have, especially in a multiplayer game like ours, the more chance you have to be viral.
That's awesome. And then when did you kind of start introducing advertising, and kind of how did you think about that? Because I think that's different for everyone. Right?
Yeah. So Stop is not a game that's very IIP focused. So since the beginning we saw that, and we learned from our own mistakes. So we knew that advertising was the way to go to make us be able to maintain the game and be a company. Early on, we had some experience on the web, and we saw that the CPMs on mobile were very good, and we could leverage that. And so since the early days we had advertisement, we did a test though, saying that we're not sure if advertisement is affecting user experiences or it's making people churn. So we took advertisement off for a period, and it didn't change anything.
So we get asked about
Yeah.
that a lot,
Yeah.
obviously, at Vungle, right? So that's a kind of common concern, right? I'm going to put your ads in, right? Like some of the great creatives we showed you, and that's going to, take people away. And we typically see the same. We obviously look at this data. We work with our partners on this. So I think the hardest thing then is to go back and say, right, we're going to reintroduce, maybe we're going to change strategy. How did that kind of process come about?
Yeah, you're talking about
on the advertising side, and how did you think, like, right, again, if it's not IEP focused, right, what are you going to do to monetize and kind of build the business side?
Yeah, so the truth is that advertising done in the right way can be very good for as an app developer. So currently the revenue of Stop 80% comes from ads, and the other roughly 20% comes from IAP. And the way we show ads, mainly interstitials and banners, I think we are happy with the way we implement it. Although this is a project that started in 2013, and we know that rewarded video has a lot of power nowadays, and in our new game, which is Cody Cross, we're much more focused on that. Yeah.
So I think one of the subjects of the talk we wanted to talk about something you did recently that kind of increased the revenue. So on our side, we've been working together on a product called Placements. So we announced Placements a little while ago. We announced it at GDC, and it's been rolling out, and you're one of our first test customers. And the idea with Placements was to help publishers monetize and include Vungle multiple times in the waterfall, and also give some flexibility around us setting multiple different floor prices. What I think is really interesting was that on your side, you'd already built quite a sophisticated system anyway for kind of handling this ad revenue as you built out your kind of monetization strategy, and that I think luckily on both sides, right time, right place, right, we had this product we were able to plug in. So maybe, I think this is a really interesting story for folks who are looking at the kind of best practice for monetization of their games. How you actually set up that, I'd call it parallel requests, but what would you call it?
Yeah, I think the way you call it is, some people call it different ways, but essentially, if you think, regardless of if the market's going to buy this or not, economically, it makes much more sense if, in terms of the ad mediation and ad bidding strategy, people and the ad networks or advertisers could bid for that user and compete for that user for that impression. And this is essentially what we wanted to do. So traditional, I'm going to call it traditional, but I mean, it's not really traditional, but the current trend on ad mediation and waterfall management is that you put the top performing network on top and the second top performing network in the second position. And what essentially happens is that the first network has the priority to see your inventory. And we wanted to change that and to make a system where we can do multiple requests for the same impressions for different networks. In that way, all the networks can bid for that top tier impression and not only one who is on top. So we use the placements that Vungle allow us and other networks that allow us to work with price floors to do that. And we make multiple requests for each impression. That allow us to maximize revenue. We were able to grow we use a metric that is revenue per session, similar to ARPDAO, and we increased that by 50% with this new structure. So it can be very, very important for the company.
Yeah, that's awesome. So where do you see it kind of going next, right? So from our side, you know, we've been opening up this placements. We were talking earlier about this. You know, we're integrating now, you know, hundreds of apps to this feature, but it's kind of designed, I would say, more to help optimize the waterfall. And I think we were both talking in terms of monetization of apps. We see that kind of moving on to be more user level, like you mentioned. What do you think is kind of the next stage in terms of monetization? Where do you think the kind of industry is going there?
Yeah, so as a developer and publisher, we would love to see other players, you know, jump in the boat to be able to bid on the user level real time. Currently the setup we have is not exactly that. We use the price floors to be able to determine if the ad network is going to get their impression or not. But if everybody has the technology and the ability to bid on the user, I think it's a win-win for everyone.
That's awesome. And then I guess in terms of the company, I think from you know, our side, we do a lot of work around automation. So you saw in some of the examples in the video, you know, me with my product team and with the tech team, together we're really trying to automate a lot of things like creative templates we showed, which based on kind of past performance will change the template that gets shown to a different user in a particular app. We're also trying to think of other ways we can automate the creative process using some of our logic on the data science side that we gain from seeing both kind of direct demand and direct supply plugged in at scale across over 40,000 SDKs that we have out in the wild connected to lots of great games like yours. What do you guys do around automation? Because I think, you know, I think we're both quite interested in it as a subject, right? How do you feel like, what are you guys doing on the kind of product and tech side to take that to the next level?
There is immense opportunity to work with this new machine learning algorithms and AI in the gaming space for different areas. But as a casual gaming company that focuses on word games, we have a huge challenge, and much of our resources, you know, are allocated into producing great content. And by great content, I mean good categories that are can be played by users on stop and have the accurate and right answers. But at also the same time for Cody Cross, which is a crossword-inspired game, producing crossword puzzles in a more automated way, but still keep the quality. So quality is king for us, and actually for anyone that wants to do word game. If a crossword puzzle is not well designed, you have the wrong game. It doesn't matter. So we use algorithms to help us produce puzzles and to help us with the categories. But what will be interesting is to use more of these machine learning resources to make the, let's say, computer do most of the work and take less of the human work there. So we have an editor at Fanatee that takes care of the content creation and checking if the puzzles are fun.
Yeah.
So if you can use technology to leverage that, this is amazing.
Yeah, and I think we're kind of close to that as well, right? Like I think what I'm interested in, and we'll open up to questions on this as well, right? Like, we can do a lot in terms of the automation, the creative, but there's still that little touch, right? To make it pixel perfect, that does need it's hard to automate really down to that final level, so it's very much a hybrid approach we have today. But it's something I think, the industry is moving to very, very quickly, so it's really interesting. But cool, so I think we're out of time. Maybe we can open up some questions from the audience.
Concerning like indie developers, those that are head down creating their products and not necessarily thinking towards the other bookend, which is monetization and getting their app or their game out to a world waiting, what kind of advice would you give to smaller developers that are creating? What should they be looking forward to concerning how to pick the right type of ad monetization and how to work that even into their design and their features, their mechanics, their play loops currently before they need the monetization? Can you speak on that?
Yeah. So I think there's two parts of the issue here. The first one is the placement. This is something that has to be taught early on in the beginning of the project. Don't think about putting ads when you launch the game. Especially with this new consolidation of rewarded video, that's even more critical. So think about your economy in a way that you can include rewarded video, even if you don't include at some point, but include that. And think about the placement of ads as if you were a user. We always think about, is this ad as annoying as people think it might be, or I play the games and sometimes I don't like the ads and I question myself if you should put that or not. Always put yourself in the position of the user. But also think that for a small developer or indie, it's much more important to get the game right and to get an audience first than to think about ad mediation and to think about waterfall or bidding on the user level. So it's much more important to grow the game, have retention, have users, and then you're going to think about ad mediation. But the issue is that with placements, you cannot think about that later on. You have to think about it in the early development and have a space, have a place to show ads and to show rewarded video.
I think just something I'd add on that is also you have placements in terms of user experience, but you also have placements in the waterfall for monetization and things you can do to improve the yield. And I think, great advice on kind of how you manage that user experience, but there are strategies once you set up those placements in future, right? When you go from that point you mentioned where you're now starting to monetize later on once you've proven the game engine, where, I would suggest, reaching out to folks like ourselves and helping, we can work with you to try and figure out a strategy to help monetize that better, because I think there is definitely some advantage you can take from the ad products that folks like ourselves and other folks in the industry are building that will protect that quality as well. And especially around, things like rewarded video, you want to be maximizing the yield you get from every ad you show. And that's something I would definitely recommend. I think it's a great example of doing that here.
I have a quick question for Cesar. To further emphasize on the importance of embedding ads as a revenue source, do you have a breakdown on what percentage of revenue from your games that comes from ads and what percentage comes from in-game purchase?
Yeah. So Stop is the game that was our first game, so we didn't really know how to do IAP. So the breakdown is 80% ads, 20% in-app purchase. For the new game, which we have learned a lot on monetization, it's going to be around 50-50. And I think it depends a lot on the genre, but we see ads as very complementary to the experience of users with rewarded video, especially, but also with interstitials and other placements. It's an important way for you to monetize non-paying users, for example.
So the benefits outweighs the risks in exploring new ad technologies, right? Thank you very much. Thanks for the excellent talk.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.